Well, Sid, I want to start with one aspect of your career which will immediately resonate with anyone who knows anything about the history of music in Liverpool, and that is Hamburg in the 1960s.
Oh, right, yeah.
How did you get involved? What happened? Can you tell me a bit about your experience in Hamburg, and when was it?
Oh, well, Hamburg. We actually appeared in the Hamburg Star Club Große Freiheit in 1964. Probably around about August or something like that. The reason we got offered that job was we went down to Joe Meek's studio in London, and at the time they wanted to record Liverpool bands, and we made a record with Joe Meek, and I think Hamburg were expanding into franchises around Germany, and so they needed more bands down there. And so Manfred Weisslieder rang me up at home, which was in Grassendale just down the road, and just said, would your band come over to Germany and do a couple of months at the Star Club, which he farmed us out to various ones in Cologne and Kiel and other places. And as well, most of the time we were based at the Star Club in Hamburg with a lot of other bands from Liverpool and all around the country, you know.
Which band were you with at the time?
Well, we were called the Nashpool. It was originally the Nashpool 4, but then we got a sax and an organist in with the band. So we just expanded the name to Nashpool. It just covered whatever we signed up for. But when we had the band, we had the bass player, and we went down to the passport office to get all our passports. Of course, we were only about 19 or 20 at the time. And in the passport office we were told to wait until they closed, and we thought, this is strange, you know, because we were there like 2 or 3 hours, and then the bass player got called to the counter and the police came in, and they said what had happened was, when he gave his birth certificate in, he'd altered it to make him look like he was 21 when he was only about 19. So we could get more money, man's wages on the dock. So they took him away and arrested him. So we were virtually going to Hamburg a week, in 2 weeks' time or something, and we had no bass player. So then we went over to Wallasey, and we got a fella called Alan Burton, who was the bass player with a group called the Valkyries, which are a very good group. So he stood in, and we had to get the contract altered with his name on and everything, and off we went. So that was the start of Hamburg. And then the first show when we got there was at the Platinum Blumen, which was an outside show, outdoor show with, I think it was Screaming Lord Sutch and people like that. And I think there was about 25,000 people there, you know, so it was quite a shock for us.
That must have been an absolutely amazing experience for you.
It was fantastic, you know, but we had a pile of photographs of our band, and so everybody was coming up, all these stars were sort of getting bypassed, and they were all coming up asking us for our photographs and autographs, but yeah, not that we were that good anyway.
I mean, everybody thinks, oh, Hamburg's the Beatles. I think a lot of people don't know that there were more bands involved apart from the Beatles. But why was it that the Hamburg promoters came to Merseyside to recruit the performers?
I don't really know. I think originally, bands like Rory Storm and the Hurricane were the major bands, and the Blue Angel was involved as well, Liverpool. So I think they came out and auditioned some Liverpool bands in 1961 or something like that, you know. And I'm trying to think of the names. There was Freddie Starr was in a group, and Howie Casey, and Derry Wilkie, and the Seniors. And I've forgotten the name of the band now, but I've got a feeling they just got a Twisting record out at the time, and then Hamburg must have heard about them. They went over there, and of course they weren't playing at the Star Club. They were playing at the India Club or whatever the other clubs were. And then I think because the Beatles were so popular and everything, that they just had a contact in Liverpool with it used to be the Beatles manager Alan Williams at the Blue Angel. So consequently, they just wanted more bands from Liverpool, who seemed to be very popular, and there was a big explosion of groups in Liverpool at the time. Anybody young fella seemed to be in a rock and roll band, you know.
The Star Club itself is legendary, much like the Cavern is here. What was the Star Club like? Do you have vivid memories of it?
Well, my memory's not very good, but I think it was a converted cinema originally, and it was in a sleazy area, a bit like Soho or something like that. So, you know, you had to get past a lot of dangerous people, you know. And our big problem was we had long hair, and some of the German fellas used to shout, "Hello, Susie," and whistle at us and everything. Have you gone back? And the first day we arrived, somebody got stabbed, and so we couldn't get a taxi to the Star Club because they'd all gone on strike because of some customers stabbed. I don't know who it was, but so we ended up going on a farmer's car. We got all our amplifiers and guitars stuck in the back, and he said he'd drive us down there, and we paid him in a couple of Deutschmarks or something. Yeah.
That was welcome to the big time then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So before then, how did you get involved with, would you call it rock and roll music you were playing at the time? You know, was that how you describe it?
Yeah, it's just more or less after Elvis Presley and everything. But what happened, which is strange for us, we lived in Grassendale down the road in a big house there, and I had the paper job. Now, I was only 14 then, so the only rock and roll people around was Cliff Richard and Buddy Holly and Haley.
Bill
Haley and the Comets, wasn't it? So that's the start of it. And what happened, we were only 14 or so, but we used to hang about with a little gang of us messing around, you know, pinching apples or whatever, you know. And one day, a fella who was a mate of ours in Eastern Drive said, "Oh, next door there's a car outside. There's a boyfriend of the girl next door to him, goes in and the car's left outside for all night, you know." So he said he was going to borrow it and go for a little joyride, so we all joined him. And then while we were driving back, there was about 6 of us, I'd say, all from the age of 12, 13 up to about 14 or 15 or whatever. And a policeman came along on his scooter, and I was driving at the time, and I don't think I could see over the steering wheel. So he said, "Excuse me, sir," as he sat on the window. He said, "Is this your car?" I said, "No, it's my dad's. I've just borrowed it, you know." So he said, "Can I see your license?" I said, "No, I haven't got it with me." Then he looked around and he got on the phone, and of course we all got arrested. When we ended up going to the court, to juvenile court, we all got fined about £4 or £5 or something like that, you know, for joyriding. That's right. And I had a paper job up at Monroe's or something at the top of the road. I forgot the name. Anyway, at the paper shop. My brother didn't have any money to pay the fine, so he had a guitar he'd bought off a fella around the corner. And I said, "Well, if I give you £5, will you give me the guitar?" So he sold me the guitar, and I started out. And then I had some friends at school said they'd come down and teach me the guitar for 1 and 6pence, because that'll pay for his tram fare and everything from Garson. And the fellow who taught me from school was called Garth Henny, and he ended up being the band instrument repairer at Bushworth and Dreyfus. He's a wonderful fellow. So for 1 and 6 I used to get lessons off him, but I only wanted to learn the chords. I didn't want to learn the rudiments of music. I said, "Oh no, I just want to get on with it." You know? So that's how it started.
Okay.
2 Western Drive was where we lived.
Right. So how did you make the step from having a guitar and learning the basics to joining a band, or a group as it would be in those days?
Yeah, it was all called groups then, days, we weren't bands. Well, I think we just got a couple of people together who played guitar out of interest, and then we realised there was an explosion of bands in Liverpool, or groups, and we thought we might as well start our own. And we were all members of the St Mary's Youth Club, the church at the top of in Grassendale there, and they said they're having a rock and roll night to raise funds or something, and they'd already booked 1 band, and they said, "Oh, if we've got a little group together, we can come along." and they'll pay us £4. We thought this was a fortune, like money for old rope, you know. It was great. So we all went up there and we borrowed amplifiers and bought amplifiers off another band called the Delrinas. And unfortunately on the night, they crackled all night and they made a hell of a row. It was shocking. But the band we were on with were called the Avalons. And their manager was one of the dads, and he wouldn't let them play rock and roll. He said, "Oh no, it's the devil's music," and everything like that. So when we did some Elvis Presley stuff, they said, "Will we all come on with them the end of the night and do a little jam session?" So we did, just so they could play some rock and roll with us. Yeah. So and then it carried on from there, and we started to play at the Hollyoak Ballroom. And then the money went up a little bit, I think, like £5, £6, £10 or whatever. And that sort of got the ball rolling. And then, of course, we got invited to sing and play at a couple of weddings and things, you know.
Yeah. So, and what was the group called then? Was it? We
originally started the name of the Flames, and they couldn't remember us when they printed out a little leaflet to start at St Mary's. They'd forgotten our name, so they put us down as the Jets, just to have something on, you know. So we turned up as the Jets, but we're actually the Flames. And Bob Wooler used to live down by Garston Park, and there was a little coffee bar there called the Idle Hour, so I used to see him in there occasionally. And so I told him, we've got a band now, you know, called the Flames. And I told him all the names. I said, "What do you think of this as the name?" He said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be..." The Talisman was another name I thought of. I thought, "Oh, yeah, that's not right." Anyway, the next thing I found other people were using the name, and I think Bob Willer was passing it on to Vince Earle and all these people, you know. So we then had to change the name again. I'm not sure that what we call ourselves after that, but I think it was our bread man came along and said he plays guitar as well, and he turned out to be a fella called Jeff Caddock, and he was actually a fantastic singer. He used to play and sing down at the Cavern at the time, so we thought it's a feather in our cap to get him into the band. And the next thing, we got booked at the Metal Box Club as well, so we got a regular booking there because all the people get up and dance to us, you know. They said, "This is amazing," you know. They don't usually get up and dance like they do for the old trio that used to play, you know. But,
so how far afield would you get bookings in those days, in the 1960s?
Well, it started off mainly around Liverpool, and then there was venues in Southport, the Click Click Club and the Broadway Club or whatever, and then you'd start playing over the water to New Brighton at the Gormont, I think it was, and then the Crawl Club was another one in New Brighton, and then eventually maybe Wrexham. You might even go to Preston, because at the time there was bands all trying to copy the Liverpool bands up in Preston and various places, you know.
Did you make any recordings in those days?
We made one recording. I used a tape recorder, a reel-to-reel tape, just to record the band, and I can't even remember what we recorded. And then we took it down to Philip's studio in Kensington. His name was something Phillips, and he made an acetate, which I don't know where it's gone, but anyway, we did that, you know, as the Beatles did at the same time, you know.
And did you think at any stage that, you know, you might have been cutting discs and releasing records the same way as a lot of groups were doing in those days?
Not at the time. I don't think we were good enough. But my brother was used to work in a tailor's downtown called Jackson's. I think it was in Lord Street, and he was having a little discussion or argument with a mate of his outside the front door in their lunch hour, talking about whether a Gold Star motorbike was a 350 or a 500cc, and there was a couple of lads across the road walking past in leather jackets, so they said, "We'll go over and ask them." And so they said to him, "Could you tell us the difference between a Gold Star, is it a 500 or a 350? They said, "We don't ride motorbikes, we're a group, we're called the Beatles." And so John Lennon said, I've no idea about motorbikes. So my brother said, I'm a drummer in a group as well, you know. And they said, well, why don't you come and see us? We're at the Cavern at the lunchtime. So my brother went down to see them. And then my brother came back and said, you must come and see this group. They're called the Beatles, they're great, you know. So eventually I saw them about a month or so later, because a fella called Sam Leach, who was a promoter, decided to put on the very first all-night session rock and roll combination of groups. They had about 12 bands on. One was the Delrinas, which were friends of mine. So this was at the Iron Door Club, but it wasn't called the Iron Door Club, it was called something like the Liverpool Jazz Society. And so I went along, but our band had been playing that night, so we didn't get there till about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. And then the bouncers on the door said, it's full, you can't get in. But they said, hang on, if Sam Leach is not looking, if you give us all 5 shillings each, we'll sneak you in the back door. So we went down, and some girls said to me there, you want to see this group, these are smashing, we loved it. And they even made room for me on the seats at the front so I could see them, you know. And when they came on, there was 5 of them. They had Stuart Sutcliffe playing bass, who later died, unfortunately. But he used to turn his back on the audience. Paul McCartney didn't have his guitar plugged in. He had a right-handed guitar turned upside down, giving the impression that it was plugged in and still singing, what did I say, and stuff like that, and some Elvis stuff. And some of the strings were even broken on his guitar, so he was just miming, you know. Although he's a very good musician. And Pete Best, of course, was the drummer. Yeah. But I thought they were excellent. And then at the end of the night, we were having a coffee upstairs, and Paul McCartney came along and said, hey lads, does anybody want to go back on stage? Sam Leach has offered us another £5 for the jam session if we all get up and do a session. So they ended up with 2 or 3 drummers, like Freddie Marsden out of the Jerry and the Pacemakers. There was Paul McCartney got up, George Harrison, I think, and people like the big 3, Johnny Hutchison. So it was just a big session at the end. It could have been 3 or 4 in the morning then, you know. So. But anyway, that was the first time I saw the Beatles.
Yeah. And here we are now in 2024, and you're still performing. Have you performed all the way through without a break?
Well, I did have a break because when I got married, which was 1966, in fact I remember it well, we were in France at the time doing the casinos down in Biarritz and Hyundai de la Plage, and so we used to go and watch the football, the World Cup on the local cafe, you know. So we went there in 1966 and I got married, and by the time we got home, and a little bit later, when Brenda had a baby, she said, you're going to have to get a proper job. So to pay for the mortgage and try and get a property. So that was it then. So I got a proper job.
Doing what?
I was a sales rep for Oriental Foods and Wines called Demos Papadopoulos Limited, Greek Cypriot. And then I moved on to a tea company and then to Eveready Batteries. So I became an Eveready man. And then I packed in singing and playing to concentrate on that. And then eventually I was a top salesman with Eveready in the country, so they moved me on, or I got offered a good job with Philips Lighting. So after Philips Lighting, it was actually called Luxtron, which is part of Philips who bought it out. And so after about a year or so, they made us all redundant. And we could see the writing on the wall because all the Philips reps, we had a Philips card, a Luxtron card, and various different companies. And they were just cutting down the staff and closing our depot down. And so I was made redundant. And so then Owen Owens, a big company we supplied, wanted some lights. They said they were doing a refit. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't supply you now, I've been made redundant. So they said the boss is down here, he wants a word with you. So I went down and he said, well, what our idea is, you've been so good and you've looked after us so well. If we give you all the Owen Owens stores, the TJ Hughes stores, from Blackpool right down to Whitchurch or whatever, And would you consider starting your own business? So that's what I did. I thought, decided that I'd go on the dole. So I started my own business called XL Lamps Limited, and I made quite a good living from that.
And that was based in Liverpool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we started by just using the greenhouse to put fire glow light bulbs in, the attic to put fluorescent tubes in, and yeah, all the bulbs in my mum's house in Grassendale, so I rented out. And then eventually I rented out property downtown, and the company expanded and expanded, you know. And then I think when I first started, I started playing guitar again, and I was booked as a solo entertainer, just a cabaret act. So I was doing my sales repping job. I was then going out at night. I didn't tell the Eveready that I was doing this, and I was doing places like the Wookey Hollow and Allison's and doubling up with big stars, you know.
So about what time was this? When, because you must have been out of the music business for quite some time, many years.
Well, it must have been 20 odd years I didn't play.
Yeah. So when you suddenly decided...
This was more or less when I started my own business.
Right. So you're going back now on stage, but this time you're on your own. You've not got...
That's right.
You've not got a group of fellas around you.
Just passed it on to the band to back me.
Yeah. And so what was that like? You know, did you feel as if it was a challenge to be doing it all on your own?
It was a whole lot different because the responsibility was totally on yourself. You couldn't turn around and no one was going to cover for you. And the worst thing or the hardest thing is that if you're getting paid for it, they want their kind of flesh sort
value
of
for money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what sort of music were you playing?
I was doing Shadows instrumentals on the guitar, and then I was in between that. I was doing a couple of Tony Christie songs, Tom Jones stuff, some Roy Orbison as well, and it seemed to go down quite well, so I made a living from it, just about, you know.
Right.
But later, Brenda said you'll have to get a proper job.
It's funny how this proper job thing keeps cropping up.
Yeah.
So how would you describe where you are now in terms of the music that you're playing, the venues where you play, and the guys that you play with?
Well, we're all retired now, so a year ago I decided I'm not going to carry any more equipment now. I'm 79, you know, and we're all getting on a little bit. But the band was still going. The group have joined because I was chairman of the Liverpool Rock Roll Society for about 6 years. So I was booking all the bands in and raising money for children's charities and various hospitals. And a lot of the bands were coming in and I was just booking them and getting up on stage with various musicians just to practice and everything. And then when COVID came along, we virtually closed the club down. We had to, because 2 people died in the club, you know, all who were members of the club, who were singers. Cy Tucker was one of them, who was a very well-known singer. And after the COVID got sorted out, a few of the bands elsewhere asked me would I fancy playing with them, the Delrinas. So we got together and practiced and everything, and we got a similar show going to the rock and roll show, but there was a lot more Everly Brothers because they're all very good at harmonising, so that's the band I'm with now. So we only play theoretically every Wednesday at the Poulton Vicks Club in Wallasey, but other groups, other clubs have been asking us to come along because they've heard us. So last night we played at the Merseyside Charity Club, which is Old Swan, and last Thursday, the Thursday before, we played at one called Rocking at the Roan Club, which is the Netherfield Sports and Social Club. We don't really want to do that much, but the good thing about it is we don't have to carry the amplifiers, we just turn up with our guitars and play. And the drummer doesn't have to take his drums. The drummer is Ian Howe, and Terry Fisher and Derek Green, who were in the original Remo, not the Remo, the Delrinas groups, which originally I saw on with the Beatles at the Iron Door Club. So they're probably the only group going now with 3 members of the original band, apart from I'm in addition to it. You know.
Right. So what numbers are the main numbers in your set at the moment? What do you start with? What do you finish with?
Well, we never do the same set. We actually are quite versatile. We do a big variety. So last night we started off with the Everly Brothers' Bird Dog. Then we did a Buddy Holly one. I did Heartbeat, just for a change. Then we did Tulane, which is a Chuck Berry one. Then I did one called Under the Moon of Love, which was Shawaddy Waddy. Yeah. So it was quite a variety. And we finished off with one for a total change, and we all put sombreros on and got maracas out, and half the audience had maracas and all got up, and we did this one called Speedy Gonzales.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a good night, you know.
Yeah.
And it's all been advertised that we've been doing it.
And it is terrific that you're still doing this after all this time. Yeah. How would you sum up how important music's been to you over your life?
It's a sort of great thing to have, because even when you're retired, you've never finished. It's a job that you never finish, so it keeps you occupied all the time. And if ever you've got a guitar in the corner of the house, or a saxophone, or any other, a piano, whatever, and sometimes you just might be fed up with the day's work, but to go and play an instrument is a great way of relaxing. You know, the other way, of course, is reading a book or something like that. Something you're interested in, or bird watching, which I'm very good at.
I mean, we're talking now with the city of Liverpool is so prominent now in terms of the history of modern music, and you've played a part in building it up to where it is. Everybody all over the world, they all know about Liverpool. They all want to come to Liverpool if they know anything about music. And I just wondered, as somebody who's been part, and you've seen how it's grown from the very, very early days, why? You know, how on earth have we managed to achieve this from this one city on the northwest coast of England? Yeah,
well, originally, with Liverpool being a seaport, of course, and the Cunard boats all going to America, that was really the original thing that started. And a lot of the sailors were bringing back guitars from the Caribbean and the like, and Calypso was the big thing in the 50s probably. But I think as soon as anyone heard a guitar, they thought, oh, that's fabulous, that, you know. And then, of course, people would get a washboard and the skiffle would start off. And it evolved from that, really. And then when Elvis Presley came along, and all the rock and roll stars, even Cliff Richard and Joe Brown, etc., television programme. But the reason it was all Liverpool was possibly we got a head start because of the Cunard Yanks, I think they were called, you know. But I wouldn't, the Beatles obviously were exceptional. Jerry and Marsden and the Pacemakers, the big three at the time were a fantastic band, Rory Storm and the Hurricane. We seemed to get a start on everybody else, but equally there was wonderful musicians from London, from Newcastle, Birmingham, Scotland, you know, probably just as good. But Liverpool got the start, and of course they called it Beatlemania, or I don't know, the Mersey sound, wasn't it, you know? Yeah. So even if we weren't as good as some of the bands, we were getting booked anyway in Germany and France. We first went to France, the American bases, because they wanted the Liverpool bands on all the American bases in France, so long as you had a girl singer.
Oh.
So you had to have a girl singer. So I first went out there with a group called Groups Incorporated. I was playing with a group called Danny Havoc and the Ventures at the time, and someone came along and said, we haven't got a bass player. I said, I'm not a bass player, but I can get a bass. so that's it. I ended up borrowing a bass guitar and going to France, doing the American basses in Chinon.
I should have asked before, what's the name of the band that you're with at the moment?
The Delrinas.
The Delrinas, okay. Yeah. If you, we'll wrap it up now, but if you, well, I'm going to put you on the spot. One memory, maybe one peak moment, something that you look back on and you think, oh, that was great.
Oh, I don't know. I think when you're younger, you just take it all in your stride. I think going to Joe Meek's studio was quite interesting because quite a lot of famous. He made a record called Telstar, which was probably #1 in Britain and America. You know, and Heinz Bert was there, and the Outlaws. So you were meeting a lot of people like that. You know, but there's no one thing, you know, going to Hamburg, the first time he ever played on the Cavern Club and things like that at all. Just the very first time he got on stage was interesting, you know. Yeah, and then it just builds up from there, you know. I don't think there's anything special there. You have good nights, and then you go. We've been to Spain, we've been to France, we've been to Germany, and, you know, so we've done a fair bit of travelling, and which we would never have gone abroad, but for the fact that we played in a band, you know.
And you're still enjoying it when you get out there with the lads on a Wednesday night.
As long as I don't have to carry heavy amplifiers and drums and everything, that's fine. So I can do once a week. And manage that, but I've done 2 nights now on the trot, so I could fall asleep any second.
That's great, Sid. Thank you very much indeed.
Not at all. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Right, will you give me a song now?